Howdy, folks. I'm sitting in the truck. It's about 40 degrees today, so it's not the warmest of days. And I've gotten a couple of the small things off my list that I wanted to get done last week. It is going to be crappy for the next week. It's supposed to snow. They're saying 6 inches in 2 days, so this is going to be my last day out here in the truck before I have to go inside and find some inside projects to work on. So I just wanted to wrap up a couple of small things. I got the fuel filler hose basically set up, finally installed. It's actually installed. It's on the fender. The new fuel hose is on the fender and it's bolted in and everything. I just need to plug it up with something before it does snow. So that is taken care of. And the other thing I did was I got this thing installed. Clearly I'm not going to be drinking and driving, but I just wanted to put this in here to see how it looked. It looks pretty good. A little bit of bounce on here, so I'm going to get a rubber bumper and put a rubber bumper on the bottom before this thing gets finally installed. But you can see here, cup holder. So that's really nice. The inside of this thing is buttoned up pretty good. I got the wires cleaned up over here so they're not hanging down on everything anymore, which is really good. They're zip tied together and cleaned up. So next I went outside and took off the passenger fender. This has only been attached with 2 bolts for about a year and a half because I'm continually taking it off and putting it back on. What I was doing here was exposing all of the piping and everything for the gas tank. You can see here it's been held in with a zip tie. So I went out and got my bag of bolts, and I'm basically going to snap this thing off and put the bracket in to permanently mount all of the hoses and everything back on the truck. With the bracket in place, I realized that the return hose had been set up a little wrong, so I had to trim some of that down and flip the metal bend in this thing so that I could mount it into the bracket and get it all oriented the right way. That went pretty easily. I did wind up having to use a wrench to tighten this thing up all the way because my socket wasn't thin enough to fit into the valley that the 2 bends made on this bracket. And then when that was done, I got the new fuel filler hose that I had gotten from a Lightline dealer and put it on for the first time. These things are not cheap, but I understand it's a very specialty item, so I'm glad I've got it. The one that I had was hard and had some small cracks in it, but it's just good to have new rubber on this thing. So I had to take it back off because the thing you have to do to get these things in properly is put them in through the hole in the fender. And I'll show you that here. Basically, you've got to hang the fender, and then you take the fuel hose and feed it through that hole on the outside of the truck. I think I've mentioned it elsewhere here too. This is not the permanent fender I'm going to put on the truck. This is a spare. Actually, this one came with the truck, but I fixed another one, cleaned it up, and it's in much better shape than this. So I'm just putting this in sort of temporarily until that one is sprayed with proper paint and it's ready to go. Here you can see me finagling with this thing to try to get it on the actual filler hose. Instead of making everybody sick, at this point I think I took the camera off, set it down, and then wrestled with this thing until I got it on. It doesn't have a pipe clamp on it yet, or a hose clamp on it. I'll put that on when it warms up a little bit more, but it's temporarily in place, and theoretically, once I get a new gas cap for this thing, I can fill it full of gas, which will be good. I haven't run it in 4 months, and I'd really like to get it idling and get some liquids through it and get it all lubricated again. Please don't judge me for the ghetto-looking fence in the backyard. That is actually my neighbor's, and I've actually tried to shore it up, but when the neighbors had it put in before I moved into this place, They did a terrible job of it, and the concrete pillars are basically sagging, so I can't help that. The fuel tank is back in sort of temporarily. I still have to put the I still got to put the clamp on this, and I need a hose for this. The hose loops up and down. That's the overflow valve there. I've got the spare locking ring in here. It's just in here for now, but this is the new hose. This is on. I'm going to leave it on. I've left it removable for a long time, just so I could take it off, pull it on, so I could get to the stuff behind here. It's not in here permanently because this is not the fender that's going to go on here permanently. As you can see here, it's got some cancer to it. I've got another better one, the one that's in really good shape, in the garage still. So this is just going to stay on for now, but all I need to do is get a gas cap, and I can actually fill the tank on this thing and get it started again, which would be great. So it's good to have that finally in place and done. This hose that I was able to get is just a little too short, but I think it'll do nicely for what we need. It's good enough. It'll hold. It's fine, I guess. It's just cattywampus in this bracket just a little bit. But again, that's not going to kill anything. I think it'll be fine. I just need to put a lock washer on here. So when I take this thing back out and put it in permanently, I'll deal with that. But for now, it's good. I can get like I said, a cap for this and close this, fill the tank, and not worry about the whole thing basically evaporating on me. The other thing I noticed when I was working on the lighting panel last weekend, I was wondering why my high beams weren't working. My high beams weren't working. It was driving me nuts. I couldn't figure out what was going on with them. I didn't realize it, but I had pulled the fuse out of the high beam panel here. I guess I was looking for a different fuse, and I had forgotten to put it back in. So threw it back in, boom, suddenly I had high beams again. So, you know, crazy stuff. Just kind of dumb on my part. But we're fixed now, so I'm pretty happy about that. Got a couple of things I'll need to purchase for the spring. I've got to get a new actually container for the glove box, because mine is a paper one and it's really in bad shape, so I'll get that put in later in the spring. I was looking for the original. There was like a Kenwood deck with 2 stalks in it that came with the truck, and I must have thrown it out. I must have just been like, I'm never going to use this, and threw it out, thinking I could get a replacement. And apparently the only replacements that you can get with a 2-stalk regular single DIN radio are the really ugly ones that Crutchfield sells, the Retro Sound, which are just, they look terrible. I don't even understand how they're selling those things. I don't want those. I'd like a newer model with a Bluetooth and some other stuff. I've actually got one. It's not a 2-stalk. It's actually a single DIN, a solid one. This is already chewed up. I could theoretically cut that out and put it in and install it, and it would be fine. I'm thinking about whether or not I want to do that, because it would be nice to have actual tunes in this truck. I'm not going to cut any holes in the doors. I would just use some external speakers somewhere, prop them up somewhere. But that is that. So the next thing I want to do is look at the wheel situation. This is the spare I got from a truck up in New York, and I've spent a whole bunch of time cleaning it up. Actually, it's upside down. I spent a whole bunch of time cleaning it up. You can see the cracks that show up in these trucks are filled in this one, and they're sanded smooth. This turned out pretty well. Thing is, this is a different color. I don't know if you can see in the light here. This is more of a true gray, and this is like a battleship gray, which is interesting. And this is actually a little brown. I had a spare cap, which is pretty close to the one that's in the truck right now. It might be a little bit lighter, because I think this was out in the sun for a number of years. You can see the back of it is actually a bit darker. I don't know if you can see that in the light here. It's darker and it's closer to this color, but it's still a little bit different. This is more of a black or a dark gray. This is a lighter gray. I want to match this because this matches the rest of the truck. And I've got the new door cards, and I want it to be as close to the door cards as I can, or at least a shade closer to that. So I'm trying to figure out what color this needs to be. And what I would do is I would probably get this sprayed in the new color and swap out the old wheel for this one, and then, you know, refinish this or whatever and have it on hand. Because this wheel is actually in better shape than this wheel. This one had fewer cracks in it. This has got all sorts of cracks around the perimeter, and, you know, these big ones here. This had the big ones in the center spokes here, but there were only like 1 or 2 cracks around the perimeter. It was actually in really good shape for having laid on the leaves in a truck for, I don't know how many, probably 20, 30 years. So the question is, what color does this need to be? And I've got to figure that out. So I'm inside the garage. I got the heater running. It's nice and warm-ish in here. This is the sheet metal from the green truck. This is 17 gauge steel. It's somewhere between 18 and 16. So it's good and thick. I've got a bunch of 18 gauge here. This is the template that I set up last weekend for the seat support. Looks like that. And I've just spent the last, I don't know, 20 minutes or so cutting this piece of 18 gauge out and getting it set up for being on the brake. So I'm going to clean this up a little bit more and draw out the lines and everything. And next time I'm over at my friend Brian's house, I'll bring this over. I'll make the 2 major bends on his big brake, and then maybe I can make the smaller bends there, or maybe I can, I know I can make these bends on this vise. We'll see how it goes. I've got to see if I can actually work that out on his vise. This would be the bend that would give me the most trouble, I think, this long one here. And I've got to figure out if I need to do this one first, or if I bend this up and then put it in his brake like that, and then I'm able to bend it this way. I've got to see, because it's a really cool finger brake, but it's very old. It's not calibrated very well. He inherited it when he bought the house, and so using it every time is sort of like a learning experience, but we'll figure that out. But I'll bring this inside and get it done. I went in my box of parts downstairs and I found the old gas cap for the Scout, and I thought, hey, wait a minute, I can use this for the Travelall. Figuring International probably never changed these in like 60 years. So I actually put it on the Travelall and tried to get it to work, and it wouldn't tighten up. It wouldn't actually catch and hold. This is the spare gas cap lid that I got off of the green truck, and, you know, coated it and everything. Put it on here and try to get it to hold, and I can see here that these 2 sections, or these 2 areas here, are supposed to catch and then basically slide onto these rails like this. These are supposed to be ramps, and it's supposed to catch on there, and this is just not thick enough, or it's not, this inside ridge here isn't deep enough, or this thing isn't deep enough for these things to actually catch and hold. So I've got to find a different gas cap. I was really hoping I could just use this and slam it on there and be good, but it's not going to work. So I'll put this back downstairs in my spares, and I'll have to go and buy a different one. That's kind of a bummer. Now I'm going to get to work cleaning up the last of these headliner bows. While I'm out here, I might as well do this, because I got nothing better to do today before the Super Bowl. So I've got these 3 to do. I'm just going to hit these with the wire wheel, clean them up, and I might spray them with etching primer today, depending on how warm it stays out here. We'll see. So let's get these cleaned up. Just finishing up out here in the garage. I've got these last headliner bows are basically done, and they're just going to sit here and dry. So they're all etch primed. I was using my wire wheel, and this angle grinder started spitting this weird oil, or this, I guess it's the grease from the head out onto my workpiece. And so I think this is actually the second of two of my angle grinders that is now about to bite the bullet. I think this might actually be the first one I bought. Drill Master, I don't even know where the hell I got this thing, but clearly I've got to go back out to the Harbor Freight and get 2 more replacements, because I've got, at one point I had 5. I had 4 corded and 1 cordless, and 2 of my corded angle grinders are now down. So yeah, I'll have to go out and spend another 30 bucks on 2 of them. So welcome to the basement project desk. I've got a bunch of different stuff I'm going through here. Really quickly, I'm trying to get the dog leg out of this Scout piece. I used a Sawzall to cut this out of an old junk Scout, probably 15 years ago. And I'm just trying to get the spot welds out to see if I can get this dog leg out in one piece. If so, that's worth saving. I can toss the rest, but she's not giving up without a fight. This is a Motorola radio from the 1967 Travelall, the green one that I parted out. This is original to the truck. I've done a bunch of research on it and identified it. I'm trying to figure out if I can get it to work. From what I understand, it's in a period of time where it was in between tubes and early transistors, and most likely the caps that are inside the thing, the capacitors, are all junk, and it's probably not going to work no matter what I do. These are old phenolic circuit boards. They don't hold up very well. You know, the transformer's probably shot. So what I'm considering doing is using a kit to pull the guts out of this thing and put a Bluetooth receiver in it, and then put it back in the truck, because this part would be original to the truck, and it'd be nice to have something that looks like it belongs to the truck. So I'm going to do some more research. The other thing I can't figure out is there are 3 leads that come off the back of this, that come off, you know, just like a regular plug. I don't know what any of those leads actually go to. I don't know which one's ground, which one's power, which one is the speaker wire. I have no idea. There should be, theoretically, 2 speaker wires. Maybe this is grounded to the chassis. I'm not entirely sure. I can't tell. So I've got to dig into this thing a little bit more to try to figure out what that is. And then I've got, this is the old Kenwood hen unit from my old Scout. This is the backup plan. I've got a decent wire harness from this. It's chewed up because it was in the Scout and then got pulled out. But I could hook this up at any given time I want to. It's a CD unit. It's old school. It does have a small input jack here, so I could, you know, run something else on it, but it does not have Bluetooth on it. So that would be the one downside to this. So this is plan A. That's plan B. Next up, this is the rear handle for the barn door on the Travelall. And what I've been trying to do is get a lock set that I can use in this thing to get it to work. I've got the ignition lock barrel in this thing right now, and it stays in. The problem with the ignition lock barrel is if I put the key in this thing, and turn it, I can't get the key out. The barrel doesn't come out. If I put the key in this thing, when it's open, I can pull the key out. That's working. When I close the lock, I can't pull the key out. It will not come out, and I'm not entirely sure why. The barrel won't come out, which is good. I've got a second set of lock barrels that are keyed to the same key, and I can't get those door locks to work in this without just popping out of the barrel, and I can't figure out why. So I'm sort of at a stall point here. I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do. So I've got to continue thinking about how I'm going to handle this situation, because I really like to put this back on the truck, and I really like to lock the truck up, but I can't. So this is on hold as well. This I'm running a test on this radio to see if this is going to work at all. So I've got my 12 volt bench tester hooked up to the positive cable right there, the positive wire right there, and it's grounded to the chassis, which is the way that this is supposed to be. And I've got it hooked up to an old Pioneer stereo speaker that I think may have come out of this truck. I can't remember now. But let's turn on the bench power and see if we can get this thing to fire up. I don't hear anything. The light is on, so it is getting power. You can see that, but actually it doesn't show up very well on the front, which is kind of funny. I'm not hearing anything. As I move the dial around, you can see the dial is actually moving. So it is tuning. You can see the action is working down there, and it is actually moving, but I'm not getting anything. I can smell it. It's got that old style. I've got a bunch of tube amps upstairs, and it's got that old style tube amp smell to it, but there's nothing. There's nothing coming out of this. And these things are hooked up right, so I'm going to call this a bust, which is kind of a bummer. So that leads me to my next project, which is going to be gutting this thing, because I don't think I feel like trying to fix this thing. I am going to keep the light on. I'm going to keep it so that the light lights up, but I'm going to pull all of this old stuff out and get rid of it, because I don't care to bother to try to fix this thing. And there's just no point. If I can get a Bluetooth insert to replace this knob for 15 bucks, I'm going to do that all day, and then I'll just have this set up as an old style radio. I've just taken delivery of this little guy. This little guy is going to go in here. This connector, when I lengthen it the proper length, is going to go all the way through the hole there, and then I'll be able to put the old knobs on this. And I've got to figure out how I can work with this old unit to get that to work. So more on that as it comes. That's pretty sweet. Here's what this thing looks like with the Bluetooth unit in place and the longer stalk that I pulled off of the old radio pots, machined down and then attached to the short stalk on the Bluetooth radio itself. So it's going to use the original knobs. It has to be shortened a little bit. So the verdict is this thing works pretty well. I will say this, it's not going to power any giant stereo system. I don't know if when I get the truck running, I would actually be able to hear this thing because I don't know how much power it's going to be able to put to the speakers. I might have to put some sort of a preamp or something in line after it. We'll have to see. But for cheap, easy sound, it's not bad. And it's going to look period correct, which is also important to me. So I'm pretty happy with that for 15 bucks, I think it was. You know, that's a cheap way to make the truck look a little bit better. I'm going to try a little bit of an experiment tonight while I'm waiting for some other parts to come in. This is my dealer badge, and I've got some stuff called Mold Max, which is a silicone mold compound. It's a 2-part deal. You mix it up in a cup. It's like 10 to 1, 10 of this to 1 of this. So I'm going to use this old mixing cup here, mix up a mold, and get this thing set up. And I'm going to make a tin badge out of this thing, if I can pour this mold correctly. So let's see how this thing goes. All right, so here is the mixed up silicone. Now what I apparently have to do is I have to drop this from a very great height to get all the bubbles out of it. So I've got to find a nice place to drop it from, and then I'm going to fill up my mold. So let's see how this goes. This part was actually pretty easy. I just brought it down to the basement and poured it. I'm going to speed it up here so that you don't have to stand here and wait around for this thing to actually finish, because it took a pretty good bit of time to get all of this stuff out. I just took my time and dumped it in there, and then scraped out the pot and made sure I got all of the silicone out. This is what you do when you mix concrete, though, and I am seeing little bubbles popping up here. So I'm just going to keep tapping at this thing for a little while until the bubbles slow down. So I'm going to end the video here because this is getting long and this silicone has to dry. But check back in a week or two, and I hopefully will have new tin badges poured, and I'll show you how I did that. So that's going to do it for this week. Thanks again for watching. Again, there's merch. I'll throw a link up for that. If you want to support the channel, buying a t-shirt would be great. I know everybody's hawking t-shirts, but I really appreciate it if you can. Every dollar I get there goes back into this truck. And I will see you next week. Thanks.